Katie here. This March marks 5 years since the COVID-19 lockdown. And this community told wonderful stories during that time. And it really felt like we were sharing the moment together. So to mark this 5-year milestone, we're using our Bittersweet Life past episodes to look back and revisit that time. And I want to thank you again for being with us during all of that. It made the time feel more global and less lonely, like we really were in it together. And that's a feeling that I and Tiffany were very grateful for. So thank you, and enjoy this look back at the stories you told and what life was like 5 years ago. Hello, and welcome to the Bittersweet Life. If you're new, I'm Katie Sewell. I live in Seattle. My co-host, Tiffany Parks, is in Rome. Normally on the show, we explore life and life abroad, and how the decisions we make affect us for good and for bad. And as a community of listeners over the last 6 years, we've been exploring Italy and Rome and how to sort out what you want from life and how to take chances and how to move away and how to come home. Together we aim to live a different life. But now, today, we are in a different and unique position as people living in the epicenters of a worldwide pandemic. Seattle is where the first coronavirus death occurred in the United States, and Italy, where Tiffany is in total lockdown. Maybe you are too. Let us keep you company. Let's explore this difficult time together, the good and the bad of it. Okay? On with the show. Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katie Sewell and Tiffany Parks. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Tiffany in Rome, Katie Sewell in Seattle. And this is part 2, special edition.
Mm-hmm.
Part 2 of our lockdown episode from Monday. So if you haven't heard Mondays yet, go back and listen to that. This is a continuing on of the conversation that we started yesterday. So I wanted to ask you about the grocery stores in Italy, because they're one of the things that are still open. And I know that when they threw you guys into lockdown, it wasn't like you'd done a bunch of panic shopping like a lot of people in the U.S. had already done. You guys, while you were panicking about other things, I felt like you guys were really subtle when it came to the grocery store. Whereas in the U.S., people were panic shopping, is what Derek and I call it. Just go to the store and you're buying way more than you ever thought you would. And things like toilet paper become important. And you're not even sure why it's important. You're just sort of like, everybody says I need to get my hands on this stuff before it's gone. And so I'm going to get my hands on some of this stuff. Just yesterday, I was actually trying to explain to a friend why people were panic buying toilet paper. When really, I mean, this is gross, but let's say we ran out of toilet paper. It's not like you can't use a towel and throw it in the wash. You know, it's gross, but it's possible, you know?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the reason why Italians aren't panic buying toilet paper. Because we all have bidets in our house, you know? And I mean, this is probably too much information, but my son, he gets a bidet every single time he goes to the bathroom. Every single time he goes number 2, he gets a bidet. And for him, that is so totally normal. It's like, it would be odd if we didn't do that for him. I mean, yes, obviously, you want to have that as a first step before the bidet, but it's not as essential when you have a low sink, basically, that you can use to wash your nether parts.
Well, for Americans who've never even seen a bidet, what does it look like? I mean, it looks like a little sink, but does it have a hose on it? Like, what's the deal?
I think some people's have hoses, but those are kind of the fancy ones. The typical bidet, it looks sort of like a sink. It's sort of shaped like a toilet, like it's more oval and kind of like sticking out as opposed to being wide like a sink would be. And it has a little faucet, just like a sink would have. And you can kind of move the faucet to like shoot a little higher or lower. But that's what it is. It's about like knee height, I would say. Mm-hmm. It's very convenient for lots of different things. And I don't know, there's something about the Americans like have this kind of like revulsion of the bidet. Like I won't name names, but some people I know very well are like, the bidet, it's so dirty. It's got to be like the dirtiest place in the house or whatever. And Italians look at Americans and they're like, you don't have a bidet, therefore You are dirty.
You're the dirtiest thing in the house.
You're the dirty ones because you don't have it. We're clean. We have a bidet meeting. We're clean.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's possible that a lot of Americans wouldn't even know how to use it or like what it is. It's just sort of this extra thing in the bathroom when you visit Italy. So anyway, but back to the grocery store. So when you finally did go and you went after the lockdown occurred,
3 days after.
things are closed and, people need to stay home. What was the scene when you arrived?
I was kind of scared about what I would find, about what the lines were going to be like. But I live in the outskirts of the city, as I'm sure I've mentioned before. So our supermarket is huge. I would say it's even large on American standards. It's not as huge as like a Fred Meyer or a Walmart or something like that. But it's big for an Italian supermarket. And there's a big atrium in it. So like you walk in and you're not quite in the supermarket yet. You're like in this atrium that's technically inside, but you're not in the actual supermarket. And in that atrium, when I arrived at about 10 a.m. on a Thursday morning, there was a line of people waiting to go in. I expected that because I knew they were controlling how many people could go in at one time.
Do you know how many people they were letting in at one time?
I don't know, but my mother-in-law happened to go when they opened and there was no line. She just walked right in. So I would say, I would guess like around 50 people or something, but it's a big supermarket.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the small supermarkets in the center of town are letting in like 4 or 5 people or maybe 10, just a lot fewer.
In the small supermarkets, if you've never been to Rome, some of them are just one room, like as if it were 2 aisles wide, basically. 2 to 3 aisles. Some are a little bigger, but there are some that are really small.
That's like the extreme small size. Like I would call that an alimentari, which is basically like one step up from like a mini market, I would say. So there are all sizes, but yes, they can be very tiny. And if it's in the center of town, it's going to be on the very small side. And I've heard from some people saying that there were lines going around the block to get into those supermarkets. This line was only about 20 minutes. I brought a book with me. I thought I would be there for a while, but the line was a lot longer than it looked a lot longer than it was because they were making people stand a couple meters apart. And so, it stretched very, very far, but it went pretty fast. And then once I got into the supermarket, there was so much space because there were so few people inside. So it was a very comfortable shopping experience. The shelves were, I would say most things were at like 80 to 100% capacity. The only thing that was kind of low was the pasta. But even the pasta was only, I would say maybe it was like 60% of what it usually would be. And my mother-in-law told me that there was like a little bit of a shortage of meat. I didn't go over and look at the fresh meat, so I didn't see that for myself, but that's what she said. It seemed like there were plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables, plenty of water, plenty of toilet paper. The toilet paper was totally like at 100% capacity. It was just fine. It was absolutely fine. And I would say I bought maybe double what I would normally buy. Instead of buying 1 package of toilet paper, I bought 2. Instead of buying 1 bag of cookies, I bought 2. But really, it wasn't about hoarding. It was just like, I don't want to have to go back to the supermarket again in 3 or 4 days. So I'm just going to do, like a double shopping. I didn't see anybody hoarding anything. I didn't see any panic. I didn't see anybody who looked scared. Everybody was just doing their own thing and being really respectful of the rules. I was really pleasantly surprised for Italy, which is a country that famously hates to follow rules.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was wondering about was, at least in Rome, we were saying, I don't know, last week in one of our episodes that you kind of had this feeling of solidarity because they shut the whole country down. People had a feeling of solidarity. It wasn't just that you were all in prison. It was like, oh, we're pulling together. We're going to make this happen. And we've made fun of a lot of rule breaking on this show over the years. Everything from what kind of a jerk would pay for transit when you can get it for free to any number of things of how to cut a line and get into the Pantheon faster. So it's interesting to me that people, at least from your observations, are following the rules so strictly. But what do you think that is? Is that fear?
I think it's fear. I think people are scared. And I think that people have finally realized that it's not just fear for themselves, but it's fear for their grandparents, fear for their parents, fear for other people that they don't know, but that are their countrymen and women who are older or who are sick. And it's so easy at the beginning of a sickness like this, at the beginning when it's an epidemic and, it's starting to get hyped up. And, it's so easy to say, oh, well, I mean, I said this myself 4 weeks ago, only the older people are dying and they would have died. They're the type of people who would maybe have died anyway just by the normal cold. And it's very easy to convince yourself of that and say, well, it's not going to affect me. If I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it. And that was the attitude in Rome, and I assume the rest of the country until recently. And suddenly something switched, and people realized that, well, for one thing, the doctors and nurses and all the medical staff, ambulance workers, etc., they are so overworked, and some of them are dying, A, because they're getting the disease, and B, just because they're at the point of exhaustion. They're just being worked so hard, and they're crying, and they're seeing death right in front of their eyes, and I can't even imagine what that's like to deal with, and they're putting themselves in so much risk. There's a big risk that, the medical system will not be able to support this much longer, and it'll just collapse, and they won't be able to save people that could have been saved. And so I think people finally realize this. And then, like I said on our episode last week, the night before this whole thing came down, everybody was, so many people were out at the bars like they are in Seattle right now, just saying like, oh my gosh. And even we went out on Saturday night. We went to a pizzeria. We didn't go to a bar, and we weren't too close to anybody, but we were in a public place, a public, mediumly crowded place. And the next day we went into town. We went to Piazza Navona. We took a walk because we felt like we needed to. We felt like, oh my gosh, we need to be around people. And that was the exact opposite, really, of what we should be doing. And I think the government was just like, okay, people aren't going to just voluntarily quarantine themselves unless they're actually sick already or very, very old, or, So we're going to have to just tell people to do this. And I really am surprised at how the Italians are banding together and doing it. And they're also doing these really sweet things, like tonight at 6:00. I was actually in the shower, so I missed it, but I doubt anything happened in my neighborhood because, like I said, I'm out in the outskirts. But in the center of town, I've seen videos. At 6:00 tonight, everybody was, on social media, they were planning this, that everyone was supposed to go to their window and play their instrument or sing.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. And a lot of people did this. And I saw a lot of videos of people out, singing the Italian national anthem or just singing whatever, or playing music or playing their instrument or clapping and things like that. And I think that people realize, oh, and another thing that's happening here is kids are drawing rainbows and they're writing tutto andrà bene, everything will be okay. And they're hanging it outside their windows. So you can see these. I mean, we're all inside, but, you can see them from people's windows, and everybody's doing this. And I think that there's this real sense of, we're going to get through this. It's going to be okay. It's really hard right now, but we have to sacrifice so that we will get through this.
Wow, that's great. That's really nice. We're not doing anything like that.
Not yet. It's going to happen. You're 2 weeks behind us.
Yeah. Well, 1 week maybe. One of the other things that I've been thinking about, because as you know, on this show, I always tell people to see what the birds are doing, is that it's gotten pretty quiet in Italy. And it's not totally quiet in Seattle, but it's gotten quieter. I live in a house that is under a flight path. It's not, right by the airport, but planes go over all day long. I have noticed that there are less planes. There are less cars going by on the street. People are more in their homes than they usually are. And I have noticed that the birds seem louder. And then our friend, Tony DeBella, who lives in Orvieto, I think it was her, or maybe it was Linda who runs the beehive. I can't remember which one of you guys, sorry, posted a little video where it's just them looking out the window and you can hear all of these birds and the rest of the street is just silent. And I had this thought of, one interesting way to think about this is, what is it like for all the other creatures to have all of us gone?
I know. I've thought that as well. The cats.
Yeah, the cats own Rome right now. They're just everywhere. They're like, all right, I don't know what happened to all those pesky people, but, we're running this place. I would love to talk to a scientist about it, because I think if the birds are indeed louder, or maybe we could just hear them better. I'm not sure. It could be either way. But if they are louder, it's like they can hear better. They can hear further. They can hear each other better. So maybe they're like chatting up a storm all of a sudden. It also reminded me of a of story a radio producer friend of mine did. Her name is Arwen Nix, and she used to have a podcast called How's Your Day? And the very first episode of that podcast was about how during 9/11, after the planes crashed into the Twin Towers and they grounded all the air flights, that scientists noticed a sort of joy in the whale population. They grounded planes and ships, and they could hear that the whales were doing something in the ocean that was different.
Oh my gosh.
And it was because all of this noise
was gone.
Oh
my gosh.
Yeah. I know. It's kind of interesting. It sucks to be the people that the plague could wipe out, but for the rest of the world, it could solve a lot of problems.
Oh my gosh, yeah. You know, speaking of plagues.
Speaking of plague, yeah. Like everybody else
I read something funny. This is not what I was going to say, but I'm going to add this as well. I saw the funniest tweet the other day. For anybody it was in Italian, but I'll translate it. For anyone who's ever wondered what life was like in the 1300s, now you know. 2 popes and a plague.
Yeah.
Because back in the 1300s, they had the anti-pope, you know. So they had 2 popes at the same time, just like we have now, kind of.
Well, at least we're in the position of we know what's going on, which back then, you know.
Do we, Katie? Do we really know what's going on?
Well, I mean, we have some more information. We know how disease is passed.
That's true.
A little bit better.
But what I was going to say was, if you think about the Black Death.
Yes, let's consider the Black Death.
As I do often. It's what I meditate on. No. If you think about the Black Death, the conditions of the average man, the average person, especially poor people, greatly improved after the Black Death because there were fewer people, and because the people who were agricultural laborers, they were more in demand. And so they were able to insist upon better quality, better living conditions, better, more money or whatever it was that they got. Their lives greatly improved after the Black Death. And I started thinking about okay, what if this is happening for a similar reason? I mean, obviously, I'm hoping that, we don't lose half the population of the planet, which is what happened during the Black Death, I think. Somewhere around half, or a quarter or 3/4. I don't know what the exact numbers are. But a lot of people. And I just thought, I don't think that's going to happen to us, but, never know. But I thought, I wonder if there's something related to climate change. You know how the world self-corrects, right? And we don't always know at the moment why things are happening. And I don't know, that thought went through my head. It's a very morbid thought, I know. But
at the very least, we don't know how it's going to change our behavior as a society. Mm-hmm. It may result in real cultural change. It may change how we interact with each other. It might have, at last, get rid of the common cup in the Catholic Church, which I've always found kind of disgusting. Knowing what we know about germs, sharing a glass, just not a great idea. Anyway, yeah, we just don't know how it will correct. And obviously there are people here that are hoping, and I don't really want to dwell on the president of the United States, but there are people here in Seattle, which is a liberal place, that would love to see the president not get reelected in November. And part of the fact of how poorly he is leading us through this, I don't know, just doesn't bode well for him. A lot of people are hoping that, or the fact that he refuses to stop shaking hands with people. Not only dangerous in how much he could be passing a disease along, but dangerous to him as well. And some people are really kind of hoping that, he's in that age demographic. And I'm not going to say that I feel weirder about the fact that if he does have it, he's passing it on to hundreds and hundreds of people. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've heard that said a couple times by people.
Wow. Yeah. Well,
but going back to the grocery store real quick, what are the interactions with the tellers like for you right now?
Well, I know a lot of them. I mean, I don't necessarily know them by name, but I do all my grocery shopping there, and I probably go in twice a week. And so I know a lot of them, and they're very friendly to me. And, I did start chatting with one of them, actually, I think it was yesterday. And I just said, the kind of thing you say to someone you don't know well, like when you want to remark on something like this, you just say something like what times we're living in. Like, who would have thought that something like this would happen?
Yeah.
And, have a very, I would say, superficial conversation about it. Nothing really deep. But she did say to me, because she saw that I had like 2 packs of toilet paper and 2 packs of cookies. And she probably knows, I don't usually buy 2 packs of cookies. She said, they haven't stopped the deliveries. So you don't have to worry. There's going to be plenty of food. There's not going to be any shortages. And I imagine she says that to a lot of people to just, kind of calm them so that people don't start hoarding. And I said, well, I'm doing this so that I don't have to come back very often and, risk more contagion, obviously. But yeah, I'm really surprised that the Americans have gone so berserk on hoarding, and the Italians are like, we're fine. Italians are big on food. Like, it's a huge part of their lives. Huge.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that all Americans across the board have gone crazy hoarding.
No, not all, but I saw some photographs of empty shelves. Like, it has to be more than 1 or 2 people to empty out an entire supermarket.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I've seen some videos of that in Australia as well. But another thing that people may not know if they haven't spent much time in Italy is that really you guys don't often have very big refrigerators. So your capacity to hoard is limited.
Yeah, we don't have pantries, for example. Like, we don't have tons of space to put this stuff. So yeah, I was going to say, that's one of the reasons I think people don't hoard. They can't. Like, our freezers, we don't have like huge giant freezers in our garages because we probably don't have garages.
Right, exactly.
So no. So that could be part of it, yeah.
We're having those same interactions with people at grocery stores, I am at least, that I kind of love these new conversations that are just like this. How's it going? And then the other person's like, how's it going with you? And they're like, yeah, same. Because we're still all in close contact with each other. But man, people, probably like every single person listening, stressful. It's stressful right now.
Yeah, I do have to say that I felt more anxiety last week than I feel now.
Well, because now you're safely ensconced in your home.
Maybe. I mean, I feel like, I know this sounds weird, but I feel like this idea that like this benevolent government, and I'm not like someone who wants to be taken care of by the government and have my decisions made for me by the government, so don't take this the wrong way, but it's like in situations like this, in major crises, you kind of want to know that the powers that be are looking out for you and that they have your best interest at heart, and that even if you don't agree with them politically, they're capable people, they have capable people around them, and they're going to make an informed, rational decision to try to deal with the situation as best they know how. And watching the press conferences, or actually they haven't even been press conferences, they've sort of been like the live address of the prime minister to the people. I personally get this really calming sense of like, okay, this is going to suck, this is going to be hard, this is going to be a sacrifice, but it's going to be okay. And we're doing what we need to do. We're really doing the only thing that we could possibly do right now to make this better. And it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, but we're doing what we need to do. Whereas last week, it was like, what is going on? Every day we have higher numbers. Every day more people are getting sick. What are we going to do? What's going to happen? It's much more crazy making.
Yeah. Yeah. You just want a leader to help, to direct, okay, everybody, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Clear plan.
Yeah. That's what leaders are for, quite frankly.
Yeah, right. I was also wondering, and I definitely don't have an answer for this, but because, we're the United States of America, but all the states have sort of their own individual thing going on. And I know that Italy has a bunch of different regions. I guess I have no answers, but I'm interested in like the division. Are we more divided because we're a whole bunch of different states than Italy would be?
Yeah, you're definitely more divided. You are separate federal states. I mean, I say you, I'm American too, but I'm not there. Each state has its own government. We have separate regions, but it's different. It's not, there are many, many, many more national laws, and then of course, every region has its own regional laws as well. But this kind of thing, it's much more centralized power.
Interesting.
Let me ask you one question before we go. Do you think that a Seattle or King County or Washington State lockdown is in your near future? Like a state mandated lockdown?
I would guess so, but I have no idea. It escalated very quickly this week. So, we started with a press conference with the governor who was basically like, he canceled all the big events, made that a mandate. That was one of the things he announced at that. And in that press conference, he said, schools, I want you guys internally to start talking about what to do if we have to shut you down. Within the next day, the schools will shut down. So I think he already knew that was coming. And he indicated that like more is coming in that initial press conference. And that may have just been the schools, or it might be more. Our libraries are closed. All those things are gone at this point. They're basically just doing all those advisements of don't go anywhere unless you have to. Stay home, work from home, don't be going to work if you can manage it, all that stuff. Now, of course, by closing the schools, they are forcing a lot of people to work from home. It is sort of a back measure too. Like if your kid's now suddenly at home, then somebody's got to work from home. And that's a big problem for people who are hourly. What are they going to do? My brother-in-law and sister-in-law are both hourly. Derek's been talking to me about what if we have to like take care of our nephew from time to time because they can't be home, and he's now home. So, what are you going to do? I think that's a question that a lot of people in Washington State right now are asking. Schools are done. What are we going to do? How are we going to pull this off?
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah.
So we're already not accepting you guys coming back from the United States.
I get to come. I read the law. American citizens and their spouses.
Oh, and their spouses.
But don't worry, I wouldn't come. I wouldn't come because I've been in Italy. I just don't think it's fair to risk spreading it more. So I wouldn't come anyway. But yeah, maybe that'll be our next episode next Monday if the lockdown arrives in Washington.
Yes, or maybe it will be on Thursday, our mini episode. Who knows?
Let's hope not. But if I will tell you from my great experience now, at least so far, and I'm not that far into it, it's not so bad. I'm actually finding silver linings in this situation. Not obviously in the sickness and death of anyone, but in my personal situation of staying home, spending more time with my son. It's really great to have like a lot of time with him, and when I don't usually get that, and having more time with my husband, and getting to wake up when I wake up instead of having to wake up to the alarm clock. They're kind of nice things too.
Yeah. Should I pull that piece of tape and play it for you 3 weeks from now? We'll see how you feel.
Yeah. Do it because I'll need it. I'll be like, I'll be Googling like, how do you get divorced in Italy? No, just kidding.
Without leaving your home. Yeah. All right. Well, we here on The Bittersweet Life strive to keep you company through all of this while you're stuck at home, wherever you are, if you end up getting stuck at home, that is. But we'll leave it there for now. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Join us again. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks to Lori Lee Elliott for her help managing The Bittersweet Life on YouTube, and to Sarah Johnson for her consultation. Our logo is made by Jody Rick at the Lost Laboratory, with painting assistance by our muse, Caravaggio. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Just search for The Bittersweet Life Podcast. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show. That way we're here for you every week. And if you review us on Apple Podcasts, we'll be grateful for you. Send us your topic ideas, questions, and voice memos. We're at the Contact Us page at thebittersweetlife.net.